What's up, everyone? Welcome to this episode of Becoming the 1% podcast. Today, my guest is Scott Chaverri. He is the founder and CEO of MitoRedLight. Together, we discuss the different frequencies of red light therapy, its integration with health, wellness, the biohacking that is red light therapy, how it applies to you, and how we are applying it here at Strict Vision Athletics with yoga. Enjoy. How you doing, Scott?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm great. Appreciate you coming on. Seriously.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Very excited. Very excited for the collaboration of our two companies and everything that's going to come from it. We have had a real fun time putting together the space and the new regeneration room for those watching, because again, the content and everything that's coming out of this is a bit of a slow roll. Our therapist, which is going to be doing yoga. Essentially what we are doing is a collaboration with MitoRedLight, where we are offering red light yoga in a 4-person setting for a semi-private type of training. It's incredible. I mean, my background, I've done yoga for about 4 years now. So I love the movements. I know what it does for your body. The red light, however, is sort of new to me. And I've watched Huberman. I've heard some of the leading experts talking about it, but I'd love to hear from you. Just first off, starting at the beginning, what got you into this? Why even go into something that is obviously so helpful for people, but why red light?
Okay, so it's a long story, but I'll condense it as much as I can.
This is long format. Go for it.
I actually originally got interested as I was nearing 40, and I was worried about testosterone.
Interesting.
And there were a couple of mice studies where they shine red light on the testes of the mice, and they show like 40% increase in testosterone. So that's interesting.
Wow.
It's a mouse study. And then there were anecdotes of humans doing that and seeing benefit. And I was like, well, it seems like it's worth a try. So I bought one of these full-size red light panels, and I was standing El Natural in front of it. And
just sunning the boys.
Yes. Well, and also the face, because it's good for skin as well.
Sure.
And so I was a user originally, and then I wanted to buy more lights because it's having one even 3-foot panel is kind of hard to do your whole body.
Yeah.
And I just realized how expensive it was. And so that was really the origins for me. Is I think a lot of businesses start that way, right? You're like, this is too expensive, or I could do this better.
Yeah.
Or do it better and less expensive. And so that was kind of the origin story about 6 years ago.
To give perspective on pricing, I mean, if someone were to, like, you gave us the 1,500, explain that to me as well for my own personal edification, because I didn't understand it. You said the panels, if it said 1,500, what's the metric? What does that mean? What is a 1,500 panel?
Well,
what is that?
Well, okay, for us, it's more of it's just a skew. It's a name. It's like the Gigawatt 10,000. It's just, it sounds cool.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
But we can get into the specs. But there are 300 LEDs in that light, and it's 42 inches tall. So it's good. It's actually perfect for what you're using it for. I think.
Yes.
But they come in all different ranges. That light's only $11.49.
Mm-hmm.
So we think it's an exceptional value for the light that it puts out.
Sure.
But even back then, when I started the company, the lights, there was a smaller version of that light. So that has 300 LEDs. The one that I was looking to buy was 150 LEDs, and it was about $1,300.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is just too expensive.
Yeah.
So we came in on competing on price, because that's generally what you do when you don't have a brand yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been a crazy ride over 4 years. The business has just grown tremendously.
Yeah. And as far as, I mean, you mentioned testosterone, you mentioned the initial interest was, of course, helping with that. And I mean, if it's as simple as shining a light on a special area that may increase the health of your testosterone, I mean, that's incredible. But where has this journey taken you? What are the benefits to red light therapy?
Yeah, so I like to describe this kind of in the micro and the macro, because there's kind of two ways to really, I think, articulate it. So in the micro, usually I start with the macro, but I'll start with the micro this time. Like, it's acting on the cells, and it's helping the mitochondria make energy. That's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. So you can go into Wikipedia and you can Google, look up something called the optical window. And it's a very specific band of 600 to 900 nanometers. 600 is the beginning of red light. Red light is 600 to 700 nanometers, and then you get into near infrared.
Yeah.
And it's so it's the bottom of near infrared light, so 7 to 900 nanometers near infrared, and in this specific range in the light spectrum, you get penetration of the light into the body, and it acts on the mitochondria and essentially helps the mitochondria make energy.
Interesting.
And so, but it's very, and the reason why this is very narrow range is below 600 nanometers, the wavelengths are short, and they get absorbed by other chromophores in the body, typically hemoglobin and melanin in the skin, which people are familiar with. And then when you get above 900 nanometers and up to 1,000 and beyond, you get into mid and far infrared. And there, the energy is absorbed by water. And so it gets converted to heat.
Which, of course, our body contains 72, 75% water, something like that?
Something like that. Yeah. And so all of that energy, and that's when you're out in the sun and you feel that warmth. I mean, that's infrared. Or if infrared saunas are popular. I know you're familiar with those.
Yeah.
That's all mid and far infrared, and that's heating the tissues from the inside out. So there's this very narrow window where you have longer wavelengths that can penetrate in the body, but you're not getting the water absorption. And so it can get deep into the body and act on the mitochondria and help the mitochondria make energy. So that's how it works in the micro.
Yeah.
I think the macro story about red and near infrared light therapy is that modern humans spend about 93% of their time indoors. Mm-hmm. So it's 87% indoors and 6% kind of in cars, which are essentially indoors.
Yeah.
Cars or trains or buses. And so we're just massively deficient in sunlight, and in particular infrared and red light.
Which is, of course, a huge contrast to how humans existed for thousands of years prior to our modern technology, our cars, our trains, our automobiles, and our houses.
Exactly. It's a new phenomenon. And if you actually look at it, obviously pre-1900, we were still outdoors, agricultural society. Then we had the Industrial Revolution, so that was like a big step where people moved inside. And then in the 50s, even more people moving in, office spaces and kind of these big metropolitan areas popping up. And so there's been this massive stair-step decrease in just how much sunlight we're getting. Mm-hmm. And 54% of the solar spectrum is actually infrared radiation.
Say that one more time. 54% of the solar spectrum?
Right, so the light that comes from the sun, or the energy that comes from the sun.
Okay.
So if you actually break it up, so people don't know this. Most people, when they think of sunlight deficiency, they think vitamin D.
Yeah.
Which is ultraviolet light. It's actually UVB. But only 7% of the sun's energy is ultraviolet.
7%.
7%.
Okay,
right?
And the other 93?
So 39 is visible light. So ultraviolet's like 200 to 400 nanometers.
Okay.
Visible light is 400 to 700 nanometers. And then, so that's 39% is visible light. Mm-hmm. And then the other 54% is actually infrared.
Wow. Near,
mid, and far. And the other thing that's important to know is that ultraviolet light, if you're familiar with, like, if you were going to go out and you're health minded, so I'm assuming you know this, you're going to go out and make some vitamin D out here in Phoenix, you're probably going to go out between 11 and 1.
Yeah,
because that's
at its highest.
That's when it's at its highest, because it's shorter wavelengths. So in the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, that ultraviolet isn't making it through the particulate in the atmosphere. So you want it needs to be at its highest. That's the only time you can really make vitamin D, depending on your latitude, is midday, right?
Yeah.
But infrared is longer wavelength. We're getting that all day long.
And there is correct me if I'm wrong, is there not a larger amount of infrared that happens at sunrise and sunset? What is the...
It's not a larger amount. It's just on balance it's higher, because all of the other shorter wavelengths are getting filtered out from having to travel through the atmosphere further to get to you at that point in time, right? So on balance, it's a higher amount.
I see. I presume you are somebody who subscribes to the idea of watching the sunrise.
Absolutely.
Watching is what is there to that? What is happening? Why are so many people going on and on about that? You got Andrew Huberman, Jordan Peterson, people saying, hey, if you want to change your mood, you want to feel better, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset. Why? What is there going on there that they're telling us to do that?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, obviously the first thing is the kind of circadian reset. Like, you're notifying the body that it's early morning. You want to do that so that your body knows about 12 to 14 hours later it's time to sleep, right? So maybe 12 to 16 hours later. So you want to have that early reboot rather than waiting, later in the day and then confusing your body about exactly what time it is. So I do think there's that early morning There's also the preconditioning effect. So there's really some interesting studies where they precondition the skin with red and near-infrared light, similar to what you would get early morning exposure, and then they hit it with UV, and they find that it acts as sunscreen, and it actually has a protective effect on the skin.
The early morning sun
Yes.
protects you as a sunscreen for the later in the afternoon sun.
Exactly. And well, that's just nature. This is
Wow.
the wisdom of nature. And like people, it makes perfect sense if you think about it. Like because we're meant to be outside pretty much all day. That's the environment we evolved in.
Right.
So
Working. What a crazy concept is that?
hunting and gathering, whatever
Yeah.
we'd be doing, right? And so we would be getting these early red and near-infrared light early in the day, and then we would start to get the trickle of UV late morning,
Which
and
is
then
the vitamin D and
right, and then midday, obviously the UV is raining down on you, but that preconditioning from the early morning actually serves to protect the skin.
wow. Does red light in a synthetic coming out of a MitoR panel do the same thing? Does it act as a form of sunscreen?
So the study, it's a preprint study. It wasn't like peer reviewed published, but it was still very fascinating. We have it on our site. They exposed an arm to different wavelengths of light from 400 nanometers up to about 1,000 nanometers. So basically violet up into low near infrared. Yeah. And the further they went up, the more, and then they exposed it to ultraviolet light, trying to burn it.
Sure.
And the further they went up into near infrared, the more protection there was.
Wow.
Right. So even in red lights, like mid 650, 660 nanometers, there was protection. But then when you got into 800, 900, even more protection. And even in the study, they described it as SPF 15.
Cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought I'd never heard that before.
So next time you go to the beach,
Well, it's funny. When my wife and I went to Mexico about 2 months ago, I brought my red light mat, and I was preconditioning in the morning. I mean, I would say hello to the sun, go out to the beach, and say, it's morning time, do my morning routine.
Yeah.
But then before we'd go to the beach, I was on the mat getting my red light preconditioning, so I was hopefully not burning as much, because I'm kind of pasty white. I have to be careful in the Mexican sun.
What is it from the sun that actually gives us that dark pigmentation? What is it that from the sun that burns us? And why does the early morning sun stop that from happening?
That's a great question. So it's ultraviolet light, and it's typically UVB.
Is what burns us.
And UVA.
And UVA.
Yeah. So UVB makes vitamin D. That's like 280 to 320 nanometers, and then UVA is 320 to 400. And so it's interesting. I've been researching this because I've been thinking about because narrowband LED technology has so many applications, and I'm currently in the red light space, but there's other things that I'm thinking about designing and bringing to market, hopefully at some point. Yeah. And I've learned that UVB, it does cause tanning, as does UVA. So if you go to like a tanning booth, typically those fluorescent tubes, it's like 30% UVB and 70% UVA. But the UVB is all that you need for vitamin D, and UVB will also tan you as well. And the way that UVB tans you is actually by increasing melanin synthesis in the body, which is what you want.
Right.
The way UVA apparently tans you is by oxidizing the melanin that's already there, and that's actually more damaging and more aging. And typically, what folks are concerned about, so it's a catch-22. Those tanning beds, I think if you're vitamin D deficient, on balance, it might be a good idea to do that once in a while. But you have to worry about the premature aging of the skin from the UVA.
Right.
So hypothetically, if you could get rid of that UVA and just have only the UVB, you might have a safer, more effective way to tan and make vitamin D.
Yeah. Without the damaging long-term effect of is it correct to say over-oxidizing your cells? Is that your melanin?
Well, it all depends on dose.
What is the aging process that happens? I mean, I think probably the general consensus is that going in a tanning bed routinely is not good for you. It's not people do it usually out of vanity. It's not a long-term answer.
Right, which is actually interesting because they do it out of vanity, but in long-term, excess UVA is going to damage and prematurely age the skin, especially if you're not preconditioning it with red and near-infrared light in the morning. Yeah. So you asked about the mechanism of how it protects, and so this is also really fascinating. The paper I was talking to before we went on air was this paper from 2019 by Russell Ryder, and there's this new thought that up to 95% of the melatonin in your body is actually made in the cells when they're exposed to infrared light. So this is, if you're familiar with melatonin, it's this,
Yeah,
it's typically referred to as the sleep hormone.
sure.
So there's something called dim light onset melatonin, which happens when the sun goes down, and then the pineal gland starts to make melatonin, so that as a signal to your brain that it's time to go to sleep soon, right?
Which answers the earlier question of why watching the sun go down is actually good for you, because
Right.
it's activating this gland. It's telling you, okay, it's time to rest.
It's part of the natural daily rhythm that the sun is setting. There's no more blue or green light. Now we're getting a little bit of that red and near infrared light toward the end of the day. And then it's time to start making melatonin, time to start settling down for the night, for your rest and digest period, right? Sleep.
Right.
So, but this research, or these scientists are putting forth the idea that actually it's a tiny sliver of the total melatonin your body's making, that pineal gland, dim light onset melatonin, and you're actually making melatonin all day long if you're in the sun, exposed to infrared radiation. And the reason is that, so when infrared, as I mentioned earlier, so red and near infrared light, they go into the mitochondria, they stimulate ATP production, which is the energy production. You think of it as the power plants.
Yeah.
So you're making energy within the cells.
Yeah.
The power plants are churning along, and there's always there's no such thing as a free lunch in biological systems. So you're upregulating your energy production, so you're also creating more free radicals.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just more metabolic activity, more free radicals,
Sure.
right? But when that happens, your cells in your body, being infinitely wise, has the coolant mechanisms built right into the cells, and the coolant mechanism is to produce melatonin right within the cells. So, and if you're getting a good amount of infrared radiation, the thought is that it's actually a net benefit, because you have free radicals being produced, you have more energy produced, you have more melatonin being produced to put out the fire, and then you build, if you're in this infrared. So that's how it protects the skin.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I don't know that we know this definitively, but I believe that exposure to infrared early morning increases melatonin production, which is a powerful antioxidant, so that when you are exposed to UV, which is creating damage in the skin,
Sure.
you have the hose, the firemen are there ready.
Which explains
the fire.
I think, two differing phenomenon. A, it explains why, like you said, hunter-gatherers could be in the sun all day long and seemingly not burn to a crisp, and
Right.
Everybody, it seems like everybody would have skin cancer and die if we weren't adequately prepared to deal with the day's work in the sun, starting at dawn, which is, of
Right.
course, as all hunter-gatherer, the sun rose, it's time to go hunt, it's time to go farm. And it also, I think, explains why today, you have this whole group of people that, like you said, we don't spend a lot of time in the sun. And then what do? We decide, hey, let's go to the Salt River. And then you fry.
Right.
Well, it also explains why children don't burn as fast, because children have naturally higher levels of melatonin, right, than adults.
Is that true?
They do. And also, yeah, so in the paper, they actually bring this up. They talk about how children are, well, they are, it's more of a problem that they're not out in the sun, because the infrared penetrates deeper into their bodies. So,
Interesting.
right, because they're smaller, they're physically
Right,
smaller.
yeah.
And so so they get more of a net benefit from having so many of their cells affected by infrared radiation that's penetrating. So
Kids need to be
so when
outside,
they're not outside, it's
Yeah.
more of a loss to them than it
which
is to
they're
kids.
not.
Right.
Today, it's not. Your kids are inside.
Looking at blue light.
Yeah, yeah. What is there to that? Because it seems like, and I'm not sure if this has an interaction with what you're doing, but you've got to have blue light blockers, glasses, and the such. People tell you, like, you need to get away from blue light. Once you can be in it for this amount of time, but you need to get out of it, especially toward the evening.
Yep.
And then you got red light, which seems to do the opposite. Have you done any research into why that? I mean, has blue light made its way into your research at all? What's different about it? Why do we interact that way to that light and interact different to the light in the regeneration room?
Well, again, I think it has to do with in early morning, the shorter wavelength blue light, you're not exposed to that. It doesn't make it through the atmosphere. So
Okay.
it's a similar concept where early morning, that's why the sky is red in sunrise and sunset, red, orange.
Sure.
And then as you get late morning, then some of the blue starts to trickle in, and you start to say, okay, it's telling your body what time of day it is, especially at midday. That's when you're getting the most ultraviolet and blue light.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. After the sun is set and we move indoors, and if we have these bright screens in our face, flashing the blue light into our eyes, it's telling our brain that it's noon.
Ah,
So
I
of
see.
course it's going to jack up your sleep, right?
Which is why they say don't do it at night. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What time is it? And actually that's how I actually originally got into this, is I had really bad insomnia in my 20s. And I always thought that I was just cursed with having overactive mind. But it was the blue light.
Yeah.
I grew up with a television in my bedroom,
Sure.
it was, it was really bad. And then, my mother actually still sleeps with the television in the bedroom. I'm like, Ma, come on, you gotta
I know.
learn from my, and but
It's the first thing I tell people when they say they can't sleep. I'm like, okay, how quickly in the evening are you getting away from the screens in your life? Are you watching television then trying to go to sleep? Or even worse, are you sleeping with the television on?
Right.
You ever have that? People are like, I can't sleep unless the television's on. I'm listening. I'm like, you need to get away from that right now. You need to try this.
it's terrible.
It's terrible for you. You are
Yeah.
not, even if you fall asleep, you're not sleeping. What is there to, because one of the most common questions I get, and this interacts specifically with what we're talking about, blue light and red light, the impact on your eyes. The biggest question I get asked, because we've done some content around the red light and the red light yoga, and the people who are coming here, that's the number one question they ask. Is it okay for me to look at this? Is it okay for my eyes to be open when this room is glowing out of your house? I mean, what is there to that? How does that impact your eyes? Because obviously blue light, not good for your eyes, especially to be continuously looking late in the day. How does red light interact?
So, again, the context is everything. So the dose is really what matters. So red light, there's really some good data that it can be quite beneficial. And again, there's a lot of mitochondria in the eyes. But the eyes are obviously very photosensitive. So you can use minimal amounts. And Huberman actually talks about this. He's talked about this, I think, like a year ago. There were some good studies in Japan in children where they use a little bit of red LED light in the eyes, 2 to 3 minutes, modest dose, and they see improvements in nearsightedness and these types of things.
Yeah.
And I've seen other studies in older populations where they see improvement in macular degeneration, same type of thing. But this is a very modest dose. We're talking a couple of minutes. You have big, powerful lights over there. Maybe that would be equivalent being 18 inches to 2 feet away from those lights, looking off center for a couple of minutes. No problem.
Yeah.
Probably very, very good, frankly.
Yeah.
The problem is we don't want people staring at them for really long periods of time up close.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's, again, dose matters.
Yeah. What I've told, the answer that, because I came to the same conclusion from because at first I didn't know. They were like, hey, can you look at this? I'm like, I think so. So I took and I found the same type of stuff, moderate doses. And really and truly the best answer is to treat it like the sun. I'm like, okay,
Yes.
It's good for you to be outside, but do you stare directly at the sun when you go outside?
Yeah.
No, but you can stare up. You can stare near. If the sun is here, you can stare here. And we just sort of do that subconsciously. We know not to stare at the sun.
Right.
But we can, I also have come to really appreciate how damaging sunglasses are.
Yes.
How bad those are for us to be wearing in any context. I don't wear sunglasses anymore. I used to wear them all the time.
Me neither. Although I did buy a pair when we went to Mexico because I knew I was going to be on the beach all day. And that's part of the problem is, again, we're just not conditioned. Like I am not, I said to myself, my eyes are not conditioned to be in the Mexico sun for 10 hours.
Yeah.
But if I was getting out on a regular basis,
Yeah.
then I probably would have ditched the sunglasses altogether.
Yeah.
But that is, most people are like me. They're not spending nearly enough time outside. And so their eyes are just not conditioned to deal with even a decent amount of sunlight.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to work your way up,
Yeah. Like anything else, I think start in a moderation. Get yourself what I started doing, honestly, because like I said, the sessions, we haven't actually started doing them yet. We did a couple of them, but we're going to really ramp them up. But what I started doing was I use my panel in the morning, right when I wake up. I block out my windows so I don't allow light in when I go to sleep. I do that light when I take a shower and I go to sleep. Again, I don't look directly at it, but it's right there outside of my shower glass door. get ready for bed, and same thing in the morning. I started, and that's probably 15 minutes in either direction. So 15 minutes twice a day is what I started doing. And I really did start to notice the difference relatively quickly.
What are you noticing? You noticing better sleep? You're noticing, I mean, obviously you work out a lot, so are you noticing anything with muscle recovery? Just curious.
You know, I noticed it more in the morning than in the evening. Now, my evening routine was already pretty good. Like I said, I block out the light in my room, and I mouth tape with hostage tape. I do a whole lot of biohacking traits to sleep better, get away from screens and the sights. But I did notice in the morning that my elevation in my mood it's like you drank coffee. Yep. Where I used to need coffee within an hour of waking up, like I would stumble out of bed. I would get ready with the stupid light from my bathroom on, and I would kind of feel groggy for the first hour or hour and a half. And especially since I found out, one of the biggest things Huberman ever said was, okay, if you are feeling the midday crash, because I'm a midday crash guy. If I have coffee right in the morning, I'll usually get hit with it like 2, 3 p.m. I'll feel tired. He said, look, all you got to do is wait 90 minutes, wake up, naturally allow yourself to, energize on your own. Then you can have your coffee after 2 hours of being awake.
Yeah.
Well,
that cortisol,
yes.
The cortisol rhythm. Your cortisol is actually supposed to be high in the morning, and you kind of want to let it do its thing. Mm-hmm. You can preemptively stimulate it, I think, with coffee.
Yeah.
And but again, you're messing with your kind of natural rhythms when you do that.
Yeah. And I found though that the red light in the morning gave me the same type of energy as a cup of coffee.
Yep.
I noticed it within days. The first day I was like, oh, this is really pleasant. This is nice waking up. You got this nice red big, and I mean, when you're in a room closed off from the sunlight and that panel comes on, your whole room glows. Yeah. Like the whole thing is this red light. And in your head, I did it almost takes kind of a bit of meditation. I told myself, that's the sun coming up. That's what I would tell myself, like, oh, that's the sun coming up. That's the sun coming up. And I would just sort of think that thought as I got ready, brushed my teeth, did my hair, all that. And I noticed immediately within a day or two that my energy levels spiked without coffee.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm absolutely the same way. I try to do it in the morning because when I do, I know I drink less coffee.
You had a question. What was it?
Your example of using it through the window in the shower, right? Mm-hmm. Does using red light on the other side of like a window, does that disrupt the spectrum of the light at all, or does that affect it?
On your shower glass door, probably not.
I mean, we're talking something that's that thin.
Mm-hmm. This is another one of the problems, though. These buildings are coming out with more and more glass, which is called low E glass, and it usually has a green tint. And they're doing that because, from an energy savings perspective, because it blocks infrared. Actually, and you'll notice the goggles or the glasses that came with your light are green.
Yeah,
and they block infrared. And so if it's a green tint glass, I would be concerned because it's probably blocking infrared, and then that's kind of the whole point is you want the infrared from that light.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is I have a sauna, and it would be cool to put it like right outside the window on the sauna.
That's what we recommend.
I think it would work with your. I don't think your sauna had the type of glass he's talking about.
It doesn't have a low E glass.
It's also very. I mean, this door right here. This is the door that's on his sauna. It's on my door. It's tempered glass, but it's not all that thick. It's about maybe half an inch type of thing, and it doesn't seem to have any sort of a tint.
It's I'm gonna test this. I mean, we have spectrometers. Maybe the next time I'm down here, I'll bring my spectrometer. We could play around with some glass and see. I haven't actually, because we can test it, and I can give you a definitive answer.
Whether it's coming through the same
and maybe
frequency.
even test with different types of glass too to see.
Interesting.
It'd be fascinating.
Yeah, it would be.
Because I mean, again, you ideally want to be naked in these situations where you're around it. Right. There's not too many settings where you can kind of just comfortably do that.
In my car.
In my backyard. and I have found that, I mean, a sauna, a shower, those are probably the two most accessible places for normal people to implement red lights. You can, of course, just use it as your morning routine, but most people's morning routine will include one of those two things anyway. So if it can go through glass and work the same way, I mean, that would definitely be worth knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at creating something specific for inside a sauna. I'm working on that.
Okay.
So that would be able to handle the heat.
You need to definitely tell me if you guys come out with something like that.
I have a prototype actually
There
in my
isn't-
office right now. I have to test it.
Bring it here. Well, I'll test it right now. I mean,
If it works in your sauna, then I know we're good.
Yeah.
If your sauna gets
oh
hot.
yeah, and it's not just. I mean, if you're gonna put it in a sauna, it's got to be able to withstand the heat, and it's got to be able to withstand the steam. Because I mean, most saunas like ours is I think it's a Swedish. It does the stones and it infuses with the water, and a lot of saunas do that. I honestly. And I've got you here, so I'm just going to kind of put you on the spot. What is your opinion of infrared saunas? Saunas that don't use, because they don't, my dad has one. They don't have the stones, they don't have the heater, and they sell this. What is your opinion of infrared saunas?
So I have, I think, contrarian opinions when it comes to saunas in general. To me, I've looked at the data, and most of the studies that are referenced with respect, this is one of the things that bothers me, because I like truth, and I seek the truth, but unfortunately, there's always economic interests that are obscuring truth. And there's a lot of people selling infrared saunas, and they reference these papers, but these papers are mostly on the types of saunas that you have. And my infrared sauna gets up to 130, maybe 140. Yeah. But the data is like 170, 180, like these really, really hot saunas, the ones that are showing like in improvements in longevity and things like that. Yeah. So first of all, that's not necessarily transferable. I mean, the data is on these old school Finnish saunas where it's 180 degrees. So to say that, getting an infrared sauna is going to give you the same health benefits is a stretch. Then also this whole thing about detoxification, I also am not sure that I believe it because I've seen studies, they measure sweat, and it's not like they're finding heavy metals coming out in sweat from sauna use. So
detoxing specifically in infrareds or in both types of saunas in general?
I would say both. I think that the data is weak. I would say.
Interesting.
Because you detox through the elimination, through your kidneys, through your liver, through peeing and pooping. That's how we detox. That's how we get rid of stuff.
Yeah.
This idea that we really are detoxing a lot through sweat, I'm highly skeptical of.
Interesting. Even a deep, I mean, like, let's say you went to a hot yoga session that was 80 minutes long. I mean, when I get out of there, I feel like a new human.
Well, okay, but there's a lot of other things going on there. You're exercising, your endorphins from the heat. I mean, there's other benefits to the heat stress. I mean, the heat shock proteins,
yes,
and these things. But the detox side of things is where I'm skeptical. Because again, they've done these studies. They measure the sweat, and they find what you would expect. They find electrolytes. They find salt.
Right.
So they're not finding mercury coming out of your body in your sweat, right? So are you really detoxing heavy metals or these other things from sauna use? I'm skeptical, but I'm open to being proven wrong.
And that's an interesting point. I know firsthand a lot of people who have had, for example, like black mold poisoning. And one of the big protocols is, hey, get in a sauna so that you can detox it out of your system. So it would be interesting to see like the studies on that or the data, if that's an actual thing, if that actually helps.
The protocol, I know what you're referring to. Doesn't it also, though, include the clay supplementation? They tell you to take that clay, ingest it like 45 minutes to an hour before sauna, and then go in the sauna, and that helps with the detox. So
is it just a byproduct of increasing circulation, maybe even deep in the body, and so that you're flushing things out better through what, like as I said, peeing and pooping? Because if they're suggesting taking clay, I'm assuming they're wanting to catch something in the bowels on the way out.
Tract on the way out,
and so not necessarily is it a sweat detox thing, right? That's I bring that up because it is a little pet peeve of mine, because I think that, I mean, I looked into it and I couldn't really find a lot of good data supporting that specific supposed benefit of sauna.
That's interesting.
Ben Greenfield is a big. You ever hear his stuff? Yep. I'm sure. Yeah, big proponent of hot sauna and the detox that comes with it. I'll find. I mean, his book Boundless had an entire 3-part chapter on just sauna use and his protocol. But I will say this: his protocol, and I think people need to understand this as well. it probably requires a bit more of an extreme setting to get the detox that you're trying to get out of saunas than you think. And that's also why I'm very skeptical of infrared saunas, like you said. 160, 170. You're not really hitting that point where like his sauna and my sauna is like 220, 230. Like that's hot. And you have to, and Greenfield, I know for a fact, in his book, he cooks, he goes 15 and 15. He goes 15 minutes in, 15 minutes out, and then 15 minutes back in again in like 240 degrees. So to get that effect, you're not going to get that same effect if you go in for 15 minutes in 150, 160. Especially if you're not, I think there's also something to the transference and heat that happens in real saunas with the stones and the steam and the infusion of the whole room that's sealed. Not those black panels with the light that's coming through that's supposedly... I'll sit in an infrared sauna for a half hour and barely sweat.
Yep, me too. Mm-hmm. And I sweat pretty easily, but yeah, I will get in. I've kind of stopped using my sauna at home. I bought into the hype. I had it, I used it, and then I just found it to be too inconvenient, where I would sit in there for, even if I let it heat up, I would sit in there for a half an hour before I really start to sweat.
Yeah.
And then I felt obliged to stay another half an hour just to get a decent sweat. So that's an hour plus the shower, and it's a big investment.
Yeah, seriously. It's a podcast.
Yeah, right? You also mentioned the sort of the commercially motivating bias that a lot of these companies will inevitably have. I get it. You want to sell your product. So yeah, you're going to claim that it does this and that when you may or may not have concrete data to back that up. But I think you're not getting the benefits that it's claiming. And I also know that it's a lot easier to sell a sauna that doesn't take 220. You don't have to hire an electrician. I mean, to get a real sauna working, an actual, not a box that you put together with 4 walls and a plug, because that's what's on the market right now for the infrareds. They're in a package. Did you have to run 220?
I did, but I've got this one right here that has both the heat and the far infrared.
So you've got the both.
So it's both. Yeah, it's got both of them.
See, that's
together.
smart. Because, hey, maybe the infrared works, maybe it doesn't, but it's not going to hurt you. Yeah. And if you're in a sauna that actually has stones and has 220 power and can really, really crank up to 200, how hot does your unit get?
It gets up to 180, 190. But it's hot. You still need to get in there. But,
yeah, I do.
Have you been in there, Eli? Okay. I've got Logan in there before.
And I remember he said it's insane.
Yeah.
It's hot. Okay.
Yeah, I would imagine the combination would make it feel more hot.
Yep.
It might, that could be it, because mine doesn't have, I don't have infrared in mine. Mine is just a Swedish. It's just the stones, and mine gets to 220, but his feels hotter than mine does when you sit in his for like 25 minutes. So yeah, the combination of the two may be the way to go if you are looking. How much was yours? How much was your sauna?
I think it was around 5,000.
See, There's something else. Okay, that's 5,000. How much is an infrared sauna without the heating structure and the stones? And they're what? Are they 2? If that? They're much more accessible, much more commercial. A lot easier to sell someone on a $2,000. How much was yours? Do you remember?
I think it was 2,000.
Around 2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so less than half the cost of a real sauna to get just infrared going. It's a much more scalable business model. You can hit a bigger market because it's less than half the cost of a real sauna.
And you can claim the same benefits. Or they can claim.
They can claim this. That's a good point. Have you found that at all to be the case with Red Light? Has there been any, I mean, I'm sure there's pushback. I'm sure there's people who say, nah, man, I'm not, even at the cost you guys charge, I'm not paying that. This is probably a farce. Have you found any pushback to the science on this, or has it just been widely accepted in your experience?
I have a 2-part answer to that question. So, there's been pushback from me for how other companies market their products. That's in terms of, again, taking science that's not transferable and using it for marketing.
Okay.
And so that's specifically with pulsing. There's a lot of companies are pulsing red light, and again, it's a marketing claim that it somehow adds benefit. But if you actually look at the data and the science around pulsing, it's all lasers.
Are we talking like it's strobing?
Strobe lights.
Oh,
yes.
goodness.
Yes.
That can't be good. I mean, I used to be an epileptic. That has to come with some warning, right?
It's, first of all, it's dangerous, obviously, like you allude to. But And it's stressful to the body, especially, I mean, even we've all experienced this. I've been to plenty of clubs with the strobe light on, and it's not, I find it disorienting and stressful.
Yeah.
But there are companies marketing it as if it's beneficial, and they're taking laser studies and trying to transfer that over to LEDs. And it's just hogwash. I just, it really bothers me. And this is also because there is a lot of legitimate science behind red and near infrared light and the benefits.
Yeah.
And in the micro and the macro, as I mentioned earlier, it's unequivocal. But the problem is that we have, again, commercial interests muddying the waters, and I think undermining a lot of what the benefits are.
Yeah.
And so the pulsing thing is something that's really got under my skin. And I look in these companies that advertise it, and they'll have science studies to back it up, and they're all laser studies, and it's completely different animal. Lasers are a completely different animal.
Yeah.
You have to, we're using high-powered lasers in a medical environment. It's much more dangerous because it's high energy. It's very concentrated. And oftentimes they're pulsing for safety reasons. They're not pulsing because the pulsing itself is doing anything. They're pulsing because if you use a high-powered laser on the skin, you can actually burn the skin. And so a countermeasure is to pulse the light. Turn it on and off very briefly. It gives the skin just enough time to cool, where you can use a high-powered laser and deliver energy deep into the body without burning the skin.
Okay, I have seen these. I saw one. It was a pad that you laid on a bed in a medical. They have one in a med spa that I saw. What in the world do they call? Do you happen to know the name of these?
I think they're typically called like IPL, intense pulse laser.
Yes.
IPL.
Yes.
Just for skin
That's
health.
what. Yeah.
That's all legit. It's all very legit. That stuff works, but they're pulsing it for safety. They're pulsing it because, they can pulse like very pointed lasers if they're trying to deliver, again, light energy deep into the body, trying to act on a bone or a tendon that's deep in the body. Mm-hmm. And they need to pulse it so they don't burn the person. And so this is just an example you mentioned about, is there pushback? There's pushback from me on some of the marketing claims from other companies where they're saying that all of this pulse lasers somehow transfer to LEDs, and pulsing LEDs is going to be somehow more beneficial. It's nonsense. And LEDs are very safe, and especially the ones that we use. So pulsing it is counterproductive. You don't want to purposely turn it off.
Oh, okay. I understand now. In the laser treatment in the medical community, it's good, but saying that pulsing those LED lights is better is not true.
Exactly.
You're taking one thing and saying it's another.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the sauna story, where they're taking, the 180-degree sauna research and saying that means that 130-degree infrared sauna is just as good.
Yeah.
When no, I mean, they're apples and oranges.
It's a different animal. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you can come out with a sauna-proofed light, you also wouldn't. I'm still stuck on that. I know it wouldn't have to be big. Think about that. You're talking something probably the size of this. A sauna is small. A sauna is smaller than this table. Sometimes you would not need a lot of light in there, and if you could come out with something. Even something that had like just a clear case that could be mounted,
just hang from the ceiling. I mean,
just
something you could
hang
hang
in the corner, and
like,
they just turn on with a remote.
Yeah,
external from the sauna, because that does not exist right now in the market. I've looked for it.
I'm working on it. I want it to be bigger though, because I'm a red light purist, and if you're going to do it, I want you to do it right, and I want you to illuminate as much of the body as possible.
Well, you could always take one, put it here, take one, put it here, maybe sync them up. I know, I hear what you're saying, but in this particular case, because I know just the geographic size of most people's saunas. I mean, my sauna is actually big compared to most home saunas. Most home saunas are smaller. You're not going to have a lot of room for a panel to be right here. It would have to be something that was like very, very thin, non-invasive, that would just go on the wall. But then you also have the problem of people need to sit against the wall. Mm-hmm. People in a sauna, especially if you go in,
that's why you'd hang it.
You would want it up
above,
in the corner or on the ceiling even. On the ceiling would be ideal. And I suppose you could do a strip, but I don't think it's necessary. You could get small little units that if you could somehow sync them up, put one in each corner of the sauna and just turn them on, that would get you your red light. You wouldn't need to have the big panels inside of a sauna. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my prototype's bigger, but I like your idea. So if my prototype can withstand the heat, then we can always do smaller versions of it.
Heck yeah, we can.
heat and humidity. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got and a lot of it. Because you figure if it's up on the ceiling, that's the hottest part of a sauna, is the ceiling of the sauna.
Yeah.
So that'll be a massive undertaking if you can make that happen.
Yeah, I've actually. I mean, there's a lot of the heat and humidity are enemies to electronic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So this is quite the conundrum, quite the challenge. But I've actually discovered the whole field of forensic engineering and electrical engineers, and that's what they do. They try to destroy things. Well, they tell you like where the break points are. So I've engaged with a couple of them, and I'm sending them some prototypes and saying, "Here, blow this up.
Yeah.
Tell me what it takes to blow this.
How hot does it take to
Right,
kill
right.
this unit?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can get it to where, oh, this dies at 500, well, all of a sudden you got yourself a product because there's no sauna in the world gets to that hot.
So I actually had a question for you because you mentioned earlier when you guys first got started, how you kind of made your name was by being cheaper than all of the other competition. Is that still the case today? And how did you actually like establish MitoRedLight as one of the top red light companies in, at least I believe in America, right?
I believe so too. I believe in my read of the industry is we're in the top 3.
Sick.
So it's a great question. I don't know that I have any really words of wisdom other than, we just came out and offered a good product at a good price. I did teach myself internet marketing to try and be able to get in front of eyeballs relatively inexpensively. I think I did a pretty good job of that in the beginning. And then we just take care of our customers.
Yeah.
We just do the right thing by people. And because I think, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So we want to make a good impression and have a stellar online reputation. You do that by taking care of people.
Yeah.
And, doing right by people and not really nickel and diming them.
Did you guys, because I haven't even gotten into any of this, do you guys manufacture these here or do you get them from somewhere in the US or how do you make them?
Most of it's overseas. I'm a designer. So I know what I want the outputs to be. And, the LEDs, most of LEDs, it's crazy. The technology has come so far the past decade.
Yeah.
But most of the LEDs come out of Taiwan. Like Taiwan's the semiconductor capital of the world. And LEDs are semiconductors. And the LED tech has gotten to the point where they know exactly how to dope the semiconductor to create whatever wavelength we want. It's actually really amazing. I'm getting kind of excited here because I'm thinking about all of the applications of things that I can design based on and relatively inexpensively.
Sure.
Very, because like I was mentioning earlier about UVB and UVA. Imagine if you could create something that didn't have all that UVA. Like right now, you go to a tanning bed, it's UVB, 70% is UVA. You don't want the UVA because it's prematurely aging the skin. It's tanning you from oxidizing melanin, not from spurring synthesis of your own melanin. So why do you even need that? And in the past, those fluorescent tubes, that's like 100-year-old technology. But now with LEDs, we can pretty much hit any part of the solar spectrum we want.
Yeah.
Very precisely. And so that has a lot of applications in terms of different use cases. There's good data about 520 nanometer green light for migraines, and but the specifics matter, right? So like I can create green light by combining blue and yellow, but that's going to make your migraine worse. But if you use narrow band LEDs to hit 520 nanometers, that's showing it's easing people's migraines like in 20 seconds.
Wow. I know a lot of people that would help.
But that's a good example of narrowband LED technology, very specific use case, but only that type of thing can only be done with LEDs.
And it's new. This type of technology is relatively new using LEDs.
Have been around a while, but it's the ability to dope them and hit specific wavelengths like we can do now, and to do that inexpensively.
Yeah.
Is relatively new. Like where the cost, the technologies come so long, I can design all of these products and make them available to consumer at a decent price.
Yeah. So then the companies that aren't doing that, because there are still companies that are charging a lot of money for this stuff. Is this just a thicker margin they've added on just because they can? Or is there something that maybe we're missing that they're doing differently to their whole process?
Well, I would say it's probably the former.
And there's there's nothing. You set the market price, and if
we're
it is what it is.
We're direct to consumer. My business. See, I'm a perfectionist, and it's a catch-22. When I bring a product to market, I want it to be the best product. I want it to be the best value. bar none, or otherwise I won't even bring it to market. And so, because to me, if I can have the best value and the best product, then it's easy.
Yeah.
It's an easy decision for any somebody that's looking for that. And so, in order to do that, I work 7 days a week. We have a skeleton crew. I mean, I run very lean. I don't have a lot of paid endorsements or anything like this. Direct to consumer, you find us, and then you do comparisons, and it's kind of I want to make it impossible for you to want to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely the most friendly prices that I've found in the industry for this kind of thing. And it has just such great application for every single person that I think it's going to do very well. Did you have something?
Yeah, I had more a question when it came to designing, because I mean we asked this question to a company called Animal House. When you are designing a product and when you're manufacturing it overseas, is that a concern for you that they won't just take that and replicate it and sell it for far cheaper? Because
Alibaba.
A lot of those other countries, they don't really abide by the same business etiquette that we do in the States, and they will just manipulate and just sell your product and your designs.
So it is a concern. I think I manage that concern a couple of ways. One is we do have intellectual property. I have patents on one of our recent Mito Adapt. It's patent pending. I mean, that process takes a couple of years, but it's in the works. So we protect ourselves on the intellectual property side by filing for patents, and so ideally we get awarded a patent, and no other company can knock off our design and sell it in the U.S. at least. Although
Sure.
we're going for worldwide. And secondly, I manage that risk by having really good relationships. I mean, my suppliers, my manufacturers, they're partners, and the same way that I treat my customers like gold, I treat my suppliers like gold, and as long as we grow together, I mean, I think that's how you kind of mitigate that risk. You know, they believe in me, they believe in our company and what we're doing. They believe in our ability to sell worldwide and to scale a business, and so it's in their interests to kind of stay on this ride with me.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially with these fresh new ideas that you keep going on. Once you partner with somebody who you realize, hey, this person is sort of a never-ending stream. This isn't just a one-off customer. This guy's going to keep going. It definitely makes sense why it would behoove them to stick with you.
Right. And then those suppliers actually act as advocates for me. So if they do see somebody even trying to knock us off in other geographies, then they can help me go after them. And so,
Yeah.
so
I'm sure. That's awesome. Well, how can people find you? I mean, if they're trying to get in touch, or if they have questions, or if they want to see a unit, where would they go?
So the website's the best way. I mean, MitoRedLight.com. Obviously,
MITO, which is short for mitochondria.
short for mitochondria.
Yes.
You got it.
Yeah.
Still often we hear Mito, which I don't mind it. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's got a good ring to it, but it was originally Mito. And obviously, if you're in the area, if you're in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, then you're always welcome to come down and check out the facility. You were down there. I don't know if you saw the new bed, but the new bed is something to try.
I didn't see it. No, that's awesome.
If you think that 300 LED light energizes you, you should try the bed. It's the Superman experience.
Is that what this is right
Is
here?
that it right there?
That's it. It is.
Ooh, that's sexy looking.
Yeah, it is.
It's 5,200 watts. It's 42,000 LEDs. It's an experience.
Wow.
That is
Looks
crazy.
like
cool
a
that
spaceship.
I was gonna say that's exactly what I was thinking. It looks like something from Star Wars.
That's
I
pretty
love
cool.
that.
It's fun.
That's great.
It's fun.
So MitoRedLight.com, and then for Instagram, social media, just MitoRedLight, same thing.
I think on Instagram we changed it to MitoRedLight Official. I don't know if there was somebody knocking us off or something.
Well, you're going to be able to get your blue check mark pretty soon. Very soon you'll be able to validate through Meta.
Already,
Just
I
by-
saw
Our
the.
podcast got
Yeah.
a notification.
Oh, did we?
Yep.
Yeah, I did too. I filled out the form. I think it's just a matter of waiting. We should see something start to happen where you have to send in your ID, and essentially if you can prove that you're you at your page, they'll give you the blue check mark. That's all it'll take. And then you'll have to pay I think $15 a month to keep it. But it's well worth it because now no one can ever replicate you. They can't ever send in your driver's license unless something goes terribly wrong. But yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming on, Scott. That was
Thanks for
awesome.
having me.
Yeah, thank
That was
you.
a lot. Yeah, that was a vat of knowledge. A lot of people are going to really enjoy that. Thank
Okay,
you so
awesome.
much. We good, bud? Cut it there?